anger, assault, the criminal law, and criminal law. We'd like to give criminal defense attorneys' perspective on pretty hot issues that we see in anger and assault cases that are really relevant, I suppose, starting with even TBI, traumatic brain injuries.
Right. TBIs are a whole different ballgame here, because people can have a TBI and some people know it, some people don't know it. Typically when you find out you have one, it's because you've been arrested. And what happens there is you got into some type of a confrontation. You're saying, I don't know what happened here. I thought I was being reasonable. And then you see the video or you start reading the statements and go, oh, maybe I wasn't being reasonable.
Yeah, let's talk about big picture TBI. I mean, really, what is it? The concept is that it's a traumatic brain injury.
Correct.
And what will happen is from that your computer has been jarred and in a way, or damaged. And you may not know that until you get an MRI or over at University of Washington getting data about it, but your behavior starts to change because of it. And it's interesting how much that's associated with hostile and becoming aggressive. And so something that we always consider on these kinds of cases, and an officer's not going to ask, hey, have you gotten a concussion in the last day or so, or in the last month? Have you had 7 or 8 concussions because you played hockey all your life? Or one of your cases, you know,
guy got hit on a skateboard, got knocked out, flatlined for a while, they get him into the hospital. He was out cold for about 2 or 3 months. They thought he was going to die. He wakes up. All of a sudden they start working with him. He has to be taught how to walk again. He has to be taught how to talk again. And eventually he gets up and moving, going to school, but he's 21 years old and they've got him in the 9th grade because he has no idea what is occurring.
And the criminal charges?
The criminal charges ended up being multiple counts of sexual harassment and stalking, because he was talking to girls. If he were their age, it would have been age appropriate. The problem is he's an adult, they're not, and he was saying some fairly graphic things to them that was making it very hard to get a deal on his case, because the prosecutor's going, I don't care what he's got, the dude's got a problem.
Right. And traumatic brain injuries or genetic disorders, mental disorders, I had a couple of brothers that had a genetic disorder, and the mother was distraught because as soon as puberty hit, they were a handful, to put it mildly, and she had problems how to deal with them. In fact, I ended up dealing with some self-defense claims with her because she was having trouble dealing with them and she needed to defend herself.
Right.
And so anger and assault cases are never cut and dry, or disciplined child cases.
No.
Parents getting fights over how to deal with a 16-year-old.
Right.
You know, so there's a lot of things that factors that people don't, on the surface, it seems simple.
Right, and especially when you're talking about teenagers, that 16, 17, 18-year-old grouping, your junior year, your senior year, your freshman year in college, that's a really tough group, an age group to deal with, because these kids think they're adults. They know everything. They don't want to talk to their parents because they know more than you know, and you've got to realize that, hey, if that's the way they want to proceed, so be it. Just be ready to come and talk to us, because they're going to get themselves in trouble, and once that happens, it's not going to be cheap.
Although we went to some of the more complicated cases we've dealt with, I mean, there's a fundamental anger issue surrounding assault cases. And one of my favorite lines is, and from my own personal insight from dealing with these cases so long, is recognize that anger is a secondary emotion. What really becomes at issue, especially when you've now got a criminal case involved and you've got a potential punishment involved, is what's driving the anger.
Right.
And there are 8-hour programs, 16-hour programs, counseling that will help people move into, it's not that you're frustrated and angry, the problem is you're lashing out on it and you're not admitting why you're angry.
Right.
And when you're under the gun with a criminal charge, it's time to cope. It's time to start dealing with that. And I've had a lot of success negotiating cases, helping clients dig into that issue.
Right, and the thing is, if you want to do that, we can help you out. If you don't, you're going to have some issues with the criminal justice system, because quite frankly, they really don't have a sympathetic ear for this. We do, luckily, in King County, have something called mental health court, and that's something where we can get you into it, and if you comply with everything, go to court all the time, and do what you're supposed to do, we can keep a lot of these charges off your record. If you don't want to play that game, you don't have to, and we're not going to force you into that, but it's one way to keep your record clean.
And mental health court's interesting. It is a misdemeanor court in King County, or gross misdemeanor court in King County. It's not a felony court. However, you can take a felony and get the prosecutor to agree to a reduction down to a misdemeanor and get somebody in mental health court. But again, these are the complicated cases. Mostly we're dealing with, generally men in particular, if we're dealing with assaultive conduct, and the issue is how you deal with your anger. And unless you're starting immediately out of the gates to show that you're proactively dealing with the issues surrounding anger, you're not giving us anything to argue. An old wise lawyer once told me, hey, you want your client treated different? Give them a reason. Right,
exactly. So if you're in a position where you have suffered some sort of a traumatic head injury, or your family feels you may have, come in, call us, let's sit down and talk, because we can help you out.
Yeah, if you're struggling with anger issues, it's resulted in criminal charges or protection order matters or stuff like that, we are good people to talk to about it. We'll give you the straight answer. It may not be what you want, but you'll get the right answer from us.
Right.
Thank you.
Call us.